Shabbat Shalom, everyone. What a gorgeous day to be together. I've been thinking a lot about a story from the Talmud that I learned 10 years ago. And I'm going to tell you the story, and for some it will be obvious why this has a really profound connection to Purim. I'll make it explicit, don't worry. But I want you to be thinking about the theme, really, of inversions. We say that Purim is a holiday where we talk about things being v'nafochu, that they're turned upside down. And I'm going to share this story from Masechet Pesachim in the Talmud Bavli. And it's a story of a man named Rav Yosef, whose son, Rav Yosef, the son of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, who became ill. And he was actually, it seems, in the context of a near-death experience where he actually blacked out for a moment. And when he came to, his father, Rabbi Yehoshua, said to him, "What did you see? What did you see? What was it like?" And Rav Yosef's answer to his father was, "Olam hafuch raiti." I saw an upside down world. Elyonim lemata v'tachtonim lemala. In other words, what was above was brought low, and what was below was brought above. And then his father said to him, "My son, you saw an olam barur," in English, an olam barur, a clear or clarified world. When I first learned this story, it was in a context where it seemed really clear what this meant. So I invite you to start thinking, what is this talking about? What does it mean to have a world where there's an inversion, where what was above is brought low and what is below is brought above? For me, 10 years ago, this was a pretty clear message that anybody who was sort of suffering and disempowered in society would be brought up, and anybody who was above would need to be brought down. And this was how we would equalize society, by an inversion. As I've been thinking about this story, I have been wrestling with it. And I was thinking, as I reread it in the context of Purim, that perhaps we need to think a little bit more deeply about what it means when it says that this will be an olam barur, a clear or clarified world. What is an olam barur? What does it mean for the world to become clear? Is it about the world becoming better, more just? The vision of this olam barur seems predicated on a very clear sense of who is on the top and who is on the bottom. And if we could just flip it, if we could just change, those who are suffering would no longer be suffering, and anybody who's had an easy life would be made to suffer, that would be a better world. That seems at first to be the claim of this story. And I've been struggling this because if anything has become clearer to me post-October 7th, it's that actually, in terms of power, the Jewish people are what I would say non-binary. That we don't actually fit strictly into the held dichotomy of oppressor and oppressed that has emerged over the past century. I was reading recently an article in The Atlantic where the cover is the end of the golden age of American Jewry, and it talks in depth about why the Jewish people in American context were so interested in what they called, or what we call, liberalism. Liberalism combined robust civil liberties, the protection of minority rights, and an ethos of cultural pluralism. And the Jewish people in America largely embraced this brand of liberalism because it was good for America, and they thought good for the Jews. And over the past couple of decades, we have seen for ourselves and myself in the context of the story that I told you about, an increasing sense that it's tolerance and liberalism that are actually the problem, that injustices have become so great that in order to fix them, we need to invert things, not to move slowly and make society better incrementally, but to invert. And I actually want to imagine that in this inverted world that I spoke about in the beginning story, we should ask where the Jewish people land in this new world order. And that's actually what happens next in the Talmud story. Right after explaining to his son that he saw, right after hearing from his son that he saw this olam and that Rabbi Yehoshua says, oh, this is an olam barur, he says, v'anan hichi hatam, and us, what were we there? In other words, what in this inverted world was our place? And I think this is actually a really vital question, and a question that we can hear ourselves asking in the confusing moment that we're in the 21st century. What is our place? Where are we in this world? The we is also ambiguous. The we in this story, according to Steinsaltz, who's a translator and interpreter of Torah, is Torah scholars. The we between Rabbi Yehoshua and Rav Yosef, his son, are Torah scholars. What will our place be in this world to come? And actually, I want to invite that perhaps that we is very particular, that it's our family. What will our place be in this inverted society? And it also could be very broad. It could be the Jewish people. It could be some broader sense of who we are. What will our place be in this reordered society? I want to leave that question open for a moment, and I want to move to another place in our tradition where we talk about things being hafuch. And I'm not talking about a cafe hafuch, which is an inverted coffee, where you put the steamed milk in first and then you pour in the espresso, okay? In the other place in our tradition where we talk about an olam hafuch, it's the 9th chapter of Megillat Esther, which Jews around the world will read tonight. And the fates of the Jews of Shushan in this chapter are said to turn upside down. Like I said in the beginning, we're told v'nahafochu, and the whole world, the whole sort of society was turned upside down. Though Haman had plotted to annihilate the Jewish people, Esther and Mordecai, in their shrewd power plays, turned their whole world on its head. But the upside downness that we actually preserve as a people is not the revenge fantasy part. Well, the Megillah plays out in chapter 9 a fantasy that justice would come in an inverted world where we actually hang our enemy on the gallows that were built for us, where we are the ones that get to ride atop the horse in kingly robes that the enemy was thought to have destined for himself. Those are not actually what our tradition preserves. And I want to take that even one step further. When we say that this is Shabbat Zachor, and when we hear Esther beautifully chant those very, very searing lines in our tradition when we're told to remember what Amalek did to us, the thing that I want to hold is actually the closing line of that maftir, where it says, remember to forget. Remember to forget what was done to you. Never forget to remember and forget to remember. It's very confusing. The 4 mitzvot of Purim, hearing the Megillah, feasting, giving monetary gifts to those in need, and giving food of gifts to our neighbors, these are actually mitzvot that are not defined by inversions. They're defined by clarifications. I think that the reason that we don't actually rest in the revenge fantasy of the tradition is because we sense that inversions are not actually a healthy vision of justice. Tempting, yes. It's very tempting to imagine that those who are under will become over and vice versa. It's tempting, but it's actually dangerous. And instead, our Torah puts forth quite a different vision of a just society. It's, you could say, a liberal version of society and not a radical one. We recite in our prayers each Shabbat morning this passage from the book of Vayikra that every single week stands out to me. And I always think, oh, this is so countercultural. It says, "You shall not render an unfair decision. Do not show favor to the poor or show deference to the rich. Judge your kin fairly." I actually think that this is quite a claim. Do not show favor to the poor or show deference to the rich. Actually judge people. Don't take assumption of what their station means for who they are and what kind of person they are. Actually look at their actions. Look at how we treat one another. What kind of vision of justice is this? It's one that tries to emphasize and center a very elusive notion, which is fairness. What does barur actually mean? It means clarified. And I want to think about clarified in the definition sense, which is a less confused and more clearly comprehensible reality. I think in this day and age, we actually really yearn for a clarified world. When Rabbi Yehoshua asks his son, Va'anan heichi hatam, and us, what were we there? The answer he gets is, just as we are regarded here, so we are regarded there. So in this inverted world, somehow our position didn't change. When we are scholars of the Torah, and by that I mean when we dedicate our lives to complexity and to nuance and to dispute, we actually dedicate ourselves to a clearer world. In this moment, I actually think that means bucking the trends in our society to polarize. To hold the middle is actually becoming the most unpopular and lonely thing that we can do. But the middle is also the place of emet and brirut, of truth and clarity. As we celebrate Purim tonight and tomorrow, I want to invite us to imagine how an olam hafuch isn't a world where everyone is inverted. Rather, I want to imagine that the whole notion of polarization of us and them gets turned on its head. That we would all become Torah scholars in the sense that we would all make a study of clarity our North Star. Shabbat Shalom.